ايه اللي حصل هنا؟ في ايه؟ انا كنت هموت.
مرحبا بروفيسور. انت كويس؟ انت بخير؟
The legends are coming back.
Legends? The legends of what?
The Anunnaki sky gods from the Sumerian texts.
Wait, what? Anunnaki? I've never even heard of them. What do they have to do with anything?
They are bringing ancient technology and mummy wedges.
Wait, the Anunnaki are sending more mummy wedges back to Earth? How?
They are sending them in bottles.
Bottles?
Bottles protected by bumblebees.
Wait. Bottles protected by bumblebees. Kids, I got an idea. Maybe we should go back to the mummy wedge cave and check out to see if there's any ancient bumblebees that are carrying mummy wedges, whatever that means. Come on, let's go. Alien bumblebees? Real or myth? Whoa! How would I get stung? I'm glad I brought this bumblebee net. Wait! Hello, Professor Thomas? Yes! A meteor? Where? Washington? You don't think it has anything to do with the alien bumblebees, do you? Right, Professor, I'll be there as soon as I can.
Kids, welcome to Origin of the Mummy Wedges, or Mummy Wedges Level 2. In order for us to get to this movie, let's do a quick review of Mummy Wedges Level 1. So in Mummy Wedges Level 1, remember we have three main mummy wedges. It's the word in, that's our first mummy wedge. The second one is of, and the third one is the word with. In, of, and with. Mummy wedges start extra non-essential pieces of information, and since it's extra non-essential, we can go ahead and cross it out. But remember, the extra non-essential piece of information is going to be like a little mini definition of the word that precedes it. Let's go ahead and look at the first example that we have down here, okay? So here's our sentence right down over here. It says, the bee in the bottle is yellow. Here's our mummy wedge right here, the word in. And this starts extra information. Since it's extra, we can go ahead and cross it out. Here is in the bottle. All right, that's extra non-essential information. It's almost like a little mini definition of the word that precedes it. Here, it's the word be. All right, in the bottle is like a mini definition of the specific be. All right, now when we cross it out, you're going to see that we have between the noun and the verb is where the mummy wedge extra non-essential will be. Here is be, that's our noun, and our verb is. So the reason we call these mummy wedges is because this extra bit of information separates the noun from the verb, like a wedge, just wedges in between the noun and the verb. And when you wedge in this extra junk that's non-essential, it's going to separate the noun and the verb, but also it's going to give you like a little miniature definition of the word that precedes it. Does that make sense? So that is a quick review of mummy wedges. I would say probably about 80% of the time the word before a mummy wedge is going to be a noun. Sometimes, a rare exception, you may have a verb, but if you're going to have a verb, then whatever the mummy wedge is going to be like a mini definition of that word that precedes it. So if it's a verb, it would be like, he went running, in the park. Okay, so most of the time it's going to be a noun, but it could be a verb. So I usually just use the 80-20 formula on that. All right, so that's a quick review of our mummy wedges. All right, so now it's time to look at mummy wedges level 2. We have a quick, easy technique of evaluating whether we have a mummy wedge or not. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the technique. So if you think about a bumblebee and you think about the location of the bottle, all right, so we've got a bumblebee and we've got a bottle. That's the two things that we'll do, and then we're going to try and associate these two together with one word. So let's try and connect a bee to a bottle, and if it relates you back to the location, then you know it's a mummy wedge. So remember, our first three that we said here were in, of, and with. Okay, so the bee in the bottle, you see how in the bottle deals with the location. If you say the word of, the bee of the bottle, so the bee of the bottle, that's where it originated from, like Professor Thomas of Edina. Of Edina is a mini definition of the word that precedes it, which is Professor Thomas, and it deals with the location. And finally, the last one, as we mentioned before, was the word with, the bee with the bottle. You see how when we say bee and bottle, and then we have one little teeny word that links them together, and that one teeny little word that's going to link them together is going to be a mummy wedge. All right, so if we come over here and we just think about a bumblebee, let's just go ahead and grab one, and I draw a bee right here, and the bee is above the bottle. The bee above the bottle. Above deals with the location. If we put the bee over here and say next to, the bee next to the bottle, the bee flies to the bottle, the bee flies from the bottle, the bee flies around the bottle, the bee under the bottle, the bee across from the bottle. So think of a bee and think of a bottle, and then look for that one little teeny word, like in, of, with, to, from, above, below, next to, across, around. That one word, and if that one word deals with a location, then you know that you've got another mummy wedge. Once again, it's going to be mummy wedges level 2. And once again, mummy wedges start extra non-essential information. Now, you guys got that. So how are we going to use this? So we were going to use this in the English grammar, and we're going to use this in the English section for the rhetorical skills, and also we're going to use this in the reading comprehension section, and to some extent we'll use it in the science section of the ACT exam. We're going to be presented with long sentences, and the long sentences, what they're going to do is they're going to separate the main noun away from the main verb with mummy wedge extra junk. Now, you'll notice if we look down here in this sentence over here, here's our sentence. We'll read it real quick. It says, the bee in the bottle of Edina with the small cap is big. Inside this sentence here, you see that we have bee, that's a noun, and we have bottle, that's a noun. We have Edina, that's a noun, okay? And then we have a cap, that's a noun. So in this sentence, we've got 4 nouns. So as you start reading the sentence gets really clunky and you start forgetting about what you read, okay? Now remember, a mummy wedge is something that wedges in between the main noun and the verb. Here, the first noun, the bee, is going to be the one that's the most important. Here's a mummy wedge here, so in the bottle, that could be crossed out. Of Edina, that could be crossed out. And with the small cap, that could be crossed out. When you cross out all of the mummy wedges, you're going to see that you still have a complete sentence and it's shorter, easier for you to read. The bee is big. Done. The main noun is the first one, and the rest of the nouns are going to be the extra mummy wedge nouns. In English grammar, these are called prepositional phrases, and the words that we have here are prepositional phrase nouns. Prepositional phrase nouns, or mummy wedge nouns, are there simply to help illustrate the main noun. Okay, so here it is here, the bee. What is the bee? It's in the bottle, and the bottle is of Edina. So the bee is in the bottle from Edina, and that bottle has a small cap. You see how every one of these leads you back to the main noun, which is the bee. So remember, mummy wedges are things that separate the noun away from the verb, but actually are there to kind of distract you and make you kind of get, a little bit lost inside the sentence itself. You'll notice that when you get really long sentences, they get super, super, super clunky and hard to read. So if you get a really long sentence and you're trying to evaluate this for class, you're on the ACT in the English grammar section, or you're in the English section for ACT for the rhetorical skills, which is reading comp, or even reading a book, magazine, an article, or doing a reading passage for the ACT, and you see something like this, in, of, and with, you can simply cross that out to reduce the sentence to make sure that you understand exactly what's going on. The bee in the bottle helps you identify that one word that's going to precede the extra non-essential information. Kids, let's go ahead, take a look at some examples in practical settings for grammar and for reading to use this technique. Kids, welcome to the lesson part of Origin of the Mummy Wedges Level 2, Alien Bumblebees and Mummy Wedges, how they originated. All right, this is the handout you should have in front of you right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just turn the page and take a look at the first section. Quick overview before we get started. What we're going to do is we're going to work with a bunch of different things here, and we're going to play a game. All right, so we're going to do some reading. We're going to go ahead and take a look at this passage. It's passage number 1 here. I'm going to just simply do paragraph number 1 and then pause video, have you do what I just showed you. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to just get our eyes used to seeing mummy wedges and make sure that you understand what a mummy wedge looks like. Okay, so here we are in this paragraph right here. It looks like there's 4 sentences, and what we want to do is just identify all of the mummy wedges, thinking about a bumblebee in a bottle. All right, in her Architects of Justice, Scholar Linda writes about, okay, that's a mummy wedge. So just go ahead, highlight this or circle it, okay? And then here's a mummy wedge over here of, it's from the first lesson. And here's another one, the bee flies from the bottle, the bee of the bottle, the bee flies about the bottle, okay? So we see that we've got those mummy wedges, and then all of a sudden at the bottom here too, the bee flies to the bottle. So we're going to pause the video here, and what I would like you to do is go through the whole essay. We're going to go lines 5 here all the way down to line 87, all right? And just get your eyes used to seeing mummy wedges, okay? So let's go ahead, pause the video here, and then we'll come on back in a second when you're done. Just turn the video back on when you're done. All right, so let's go ahead and see if we can find mummy wedges in the rest of the essay here. All right, so it looks like we've got into, the bee flew into the bottle. Of is right here, and lots of mummy wedges in here. the B votes or runs by or runs at the bottle. Here we have for the B votes for the bottle. From, here's a mummy wedge again. Just basically want to go and circle all of these mummy wedges. You can see that there's quite a few of them. All right. So we'll just do the first up to line 15. All right, just to make sure that you're on board. All right, from here and all right, good. So it looks like those are the main ones, lines 1 through 15. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look and see what actually is going on with these mummy wedges. Okay, so we're going to kind of incorporate this with a different lesson called pruning. And pruning means we're going to cross out stuff that's non-essential. All right, we learned in pruning and in the abandoned boxcar that we have independent clauses and dependent clauses. Okay, if we start up here in my sentence, okay, you're going to see that it says in her article, Architects of Justice, and then there's a comma. That's a dependent clause, and according to the pruning philosophy, we could cross out dependent clauses because the most important part of a sentence is going to be our independent clause. All right, so here it says scholar Linda Mulcahy writes. That's an independent clause. Now you're going to see that here's our mummy wedge. So this is going to give you a mini definition about what she writes about how physical arrangements, okay, and then of the courtroom. So of the courtroom refers you back to the arrangements, and the arrangements is what she's writing about. She's writing about arrangements of a courtroom. Okay, it says scholar Linda Mulcahy writes is a far cry from blah 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 blah. You can see that this can all be crossed out. All right, because this is just the independent clause. Scholar Linda Mulcahy writes, and she's going to write about this courtroom. All right, so the main gist of this is going to be the independent clause, and then keep in mind that what we're going to try and do is just what I did here. So I'm going to cut you loose, and I'm going to have you go ahead and work from here in line 5 all the way down to line 50. And what we're going to do is we're going to see that mummy wedges are non-essential pieces of information. So what I want you to do is I want you to A, cross out dependent clauses. They could be on the front, they could be on the back, or they could be in the middle, Mr. Chung style. The second thing is we've already identified all of our mummy wedges, so you know that our mummy wedge, you just simply cross that out, and that will help you get down to the gist of the sentence, which is our independent clause. All right, so we're going to pause the video again here, and I'm going to have you work all the way up to line 50, and I'm going to show you what I did when we come back. All right, keep in mind that dependent clauses and mummy wedges are extra non-essential bits of information, and what we want to do is just kind of get them out of there, prune them out just to find the independent clause, and then what we'll do is we'll link the independent clauses together to follow the train of thought on this essay. All right, just to review what we did in paragraph number 1, the independent clause is scholar Linda Mulcahy, and she's going to write about something. All right, now when we go to line 5, it says imagine walking into a courtroom. Now, when you walk into a courtroom, this is what Mulcahy is writing about. She's writing about walking into a courtroom and what you see. You see that in most courtrooms, that's dependent. We cross it out. And we have the dependent clause here, which is officers. All right, that's our main noun. Of the court, flank the entrance in the back and stand at the front as well. Okay, monitoring the room for rules of violations. So basically, we have a lady writing about what she sees when she walks into a courtroom, and the gist of what she's seeing is an officer. We come down over here and we cross out this invariably because that's a dependent clause, non-essential information. The proceedings are separated from can be crossed out the viewing area by a low blah 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 blah. All right, so now we have walk into a courtroom, you see an officer, and now you're seeing that proceedings are going to be separated. Okay, thinking in advance who, what, where, when, why, how, using the genius brain, we would try and ask questions. So why would we do that? All right, it says the topography allows the judge to observe the room's activity. All right, so now it's separated, but the judge sits up on the stand, which is higher. So maybe the walls don't go all the way up. It separates the people in the courtroom. Now think, why? Why would you want to separate people in a courtroom? We have an officer, which is a police officer, and a police officer has a badge and a gun and a uniform and maybe a billy club. So there might be some type of a danger. Otherwise, we wouldn't need an officer. That's why we're separating them. And there's some kind of a crime that's gone on because we have a judge that's going to determine what's going to happen. All right? See what we're doing? We're putting it all together here. Now, the judge is going to be sitting on the stand higher to be observing both little rooms or divided sides that are separated. We go down to the next sentence. It often feels more like a theater than anything else. It feels weird. When you're on one side, you can't see the other side, and you can see the judge above you staring in. It probably feels a little bit weird. It feels uncomfortable. So what's going to happen? Maybe we're going to change it. Maybe we're going to do something different. Okay, we go down to line 16. See how we're anticipating what's going to happen? It says these architectural features. So now the architectural features is the separation of the room. Okay, it says cross all this stuff out in the middle. It's with, all the way of, and with, and of again. And you see that the verb over here. Here it says these architectural features coupled leave little question why the public would find courtrooms less welcoming. Well, if they're not very welcoming, that's because of the architecture, and you see that in line 16. And the architecture feels like a theater, which comes from line 13. And the theater is because there's a judge up in the front, way up, just kind of like the movie screen. And we're in a courtroom with an officer that makes it feel like there's something going on where we need an officer, potentially could be dangerous. We have to separate the clients away from each other. All right? We simply move down to line 22. In line 22 are dependent clauses in 2003, Baxter County, and then we have Texas. Texas took. All right, Texas took some measures. All right, and what did they do? They're going to change this. We cross out the mummy wedges and the dependent clause, and now we see Texas is changing. Texas is changing the courtroom by using architecture to non-separate or to separate in a different way what we've seen from old school courtrooms. See how we're kind of just guessing on this? Cross out all this extra stuff here. It says it was a radical departure. So Texas did something different with their architecture in their courtrooms to separate people. Now we go down to the next line, which is line 33. It says a design team formed included architects. We have an architectural firm that's designing new courtrooms that's still going to separate, but they're going to separate them in a different way, just like Texas did. That's going to be radical. All right, the design team again, and what did they do? They're going to do a creation on line 40. The creation made clear a significant role of technology that would play. So now we're going to separate people, but we're going to use technology in a different way. So let's think who, what, where, when, why, how. What's technology? Technology is speakers, it's microphones, it's video cameras. So we're going to separate people, but maybe we're going to be able to do it like on monitors, where one room will have a big monitor in front, the other room will have a monitor in the front, and maybe the judge will be on a different monitor. It'll be kind of like Skype almost, or better yet, it would be like a Zoom call. All right. Now we keep going down here, and it says each courtroom would need all technological tools available. All right, so all the technological tools, it says the extensive use of video would be expected, all right, to communicate on line 46, all right? So now we're using video to communicate through technology. With the design team set that up in a courtroom that's radical, starting with Texas, and we want to make sure that we're going to separate these people in the courtroom. We need an officer to make sure that things stay intact where there's no unruliness. All right, so separating clients potentially that did some type of a nasty thing would be a good idea. So now maybe we put them, we could have the prisoner in jail, and then we could still have the whoever it is be in a safe spot. All right, so there you have it. That's a quick overview of mummy wedges level 2, along with pruning, knocking out the dependent clauses on the front, on the back, and in the middle. All right, for those kids that would like to finish pruning this passage and then try the questions to see how easy the questions are, go ahead and pause the video here. The next screen that's going to pop up will just be a simple list of the answer choices for problems 1 through 10. Go ahead, pause the video here, or continue on to work with the English section next. All right, so the answers for passage number 1 that we did, here are the answer choices. 1 is C, 2 is J, 3A, 4 H, 5 is A, 6 G, 7 is C, 8 J, 9 C, and 10 is H. If you do have any questions about why you got something wrong, feel free to text Professor Thomas for the answer explanation. Let's move on to the next section. Real quick, we're going to take a look at how we can use mummy wedges level 2 in the English grammar section. All right, everyone, on to the English grammar section. We're going to use mummy wedges level 2 to help you understand how to answer the questions in this section. You know what mummy wedges are, level 1 and 2. How are we going to use them? All right, you saw that we are going to use them in the reading section. That what happens is if we have a mummy wedge like the word in, whatever comes after the mummy wedge is going to define the word, like a mini definition of the word that comes right before it, which usually is going to be a noun. Okay, so in the grammar section you're going to see this as well. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, a mummy wedge is like a comma. So we don't want to use 2 commas ever in a row, just like we would never use 2 mummy wedges in a row, or a comma and a mummy wedge. I'd say about 80% of the time you're not going to use a comma and the word that's a mummy wedge before it. Okay, there are some exceptions to that, but that's dealing with Mr. Chung and beyond this video. So a comma and a mummy wedge is called a mummy wedge violation. All right, awesome. We're going to do 3 questions, and if you would like to continue on beyond that, I will give you the answers, but we won't explain it in this video. This video is dealing just with mummy wedges. Problems that we're going to work with here are going to be problem number 1. We're going to do problem number 8. And we're going to do problem number 12. So pause the video here. What we'll do is we'll come on back and we'll take a look at how to use mummy wedges to answer these 3 problems. All right, problem number 1 here. We'll start off with this one. If you look at this sentence here, you're going to see that the second part here is a mummy wedge, which is non-essential information of science fiction. And that's going to give you more information about the writer. So we have a writer, and the writer is of science fiction. Okay, so that makes sense because they're going to write of the topic of science fiction. Now you're going to look at our answer choices here, and you see that there's a mummy wedge down over here in D, which means that you would put this in the underlined portion, and you would have in and of right next to each other. So that's going to be a double mummy wedge that can be crossed out. Here it's the same thing. That can be crossed out. Now there's 2 answer choices left, A and D, and here we see award-winning author and writer and award-winning author. Here this is a different rule. Award-winning author and writer, that's redundant. Razorblade says C is going to be the correct answer on that one. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next problem. All right, here we are in problem number 8, and the thing to keep in mind with this is here in answer choice no change, the word of and a mummy wedge and a comma. That's a mummy wedge violation. It's like putting 2 commas in a row. A mummy wedge is just like a comma, so we don't need it. Okay, the second thing is you probably didn't see it, but the word to, that's a mummy wedge. The bumblebee flies to the bottle. And if you were going to put any type of a punctuation before that, that's like putting a comma and a mummy wedge together. So that's going to be out. Quite easy when you know this mummy wedge rule here, level 2. G is the correct answer for problem 8. All right, here we are in problem number 12. And what I would like to explain on this one is you're going to see here we have G, by, it's a mummy wedge, and J, it says in and into. Now, we need to know what the definition of a mummy wedge is. Into means you're going to go inside of it. And by means you're going to go by it, kind of like next to it. And in means it's going to be in it. All right? So think of the definition of a mummy wedge and those words. And then take a look. It's going to be giving you a mini definition of the word before that. Pause the video here. We'll come on back in a second with the answer. All right. So here's a little bit of a problem. This word here, milieus, is basically like a genre, many science fiction milieus, many science fiction styles, many science fiction types, okay? So here you're going to see that Einstein's band, and then this is a mummy wedge that could be crossed out, okay? So Einstein's band is inside these genres of science fiction. So is it by the science fiction? Is Einstein's band by the science fiction? No. Okay. When deals with time, so that's out. And here entry choice F says into. It doesn't go into the millennia, it's in already. So J is the correct answer for problem number 12. Now, for those kids that are interested in completing all 15 questions, pause the video here again, and I'll come on back in a second with the answer choices 1 through 15. All right, let's take a look at the answer choices starting with number 1. 1 is C, 2 F, 3 is D, 4 G, 5 C, 6 is F, 7 B, 8 G, number 9 C, 10 is H, 11 is B, 12 J, 13 is D, 14 J, and the last one, 15, is A as an apple. If you do need to get any of these questions reviewed, please text Professor Thomas and I can explain these further.